An important part of Africa's rich and vibrant history is its dynamic stories of leadership. From some of the most peaceful reigns to some of the worst ones, Africa has seen a spectrum of leaders who have left their marks on the continent and beyond. Welcome to the first episode of our series delving into the complex legacies of Africa's top dictators. We'll look into the irregular dynamics of power, politics, and people, starting with one of the most commanding figures in recent memory, Robert Mugabe. Mugabe's name stirs both strong emotions and divided opinions. Was he a savior, leading Zimbabwe to independence and challenging colonial rule? Or was he an oppressor whose iron-fisted grip on power led to economic ruin and political oppression? Join us as we unravel the layers of Mugabe's rule and offer insights into the divisive question, was he a liberator or a tyrant? Born on February 21, 1924, in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe's early life was defined by colonial struggles. Growing up in a small village in Kutama, he experienced firsthand the injustices of British colonial rule and the segregationist policies that oppressed the indigenous African population. Mugabe's pursuit of education took him to South Africa and later to Ghana, where he became influenced by the Pan-Africanist ideals of leaders like Kwame Nkrumah. Returning to Rhodesia in the early 1960s, Mugabe buried himself in politics, advocating for the rights of black Zimbabweans and joining the struggle against white minority rule. His activism led to multiple arrests and imprisonments by the colonial authorities. However, it also propelled him to leadership within the Zimbabwean African National Union, ZANU, one of the main liberation movements fighting for independence. By the late 1970s, the tide of history began to turn. International pressure mounted against the white minority regime, and negotiations led to the Lancaster House Agreement in 1979. Mugabe emerged as the country's first prime minister, hailed by many as a symbol of hope and liberation. Yet beneath the surface, his authoritarian tendencies were already taking root, hinting at the complexities of his future rule. As Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980, Robert Mugabe became its first prime minister amid high hopes and optimism. His leadership was initially celebrated both domestically and internationally, seen as a beacon of hope for a country emerging from the shadows of colonialism. Another win for the African continent, many believed. Mugabe's political prowess and charisma solidified his hold on power, as he handled post-independence politics with skill. His party, zanu-pf, secured a stronghold on the reins of government, consolidating power under Mugabe's leadership. However, cracks in the facade of Mugabe's rule began to appear as early as the 1980s. The Gukarahundi massacres, a brutal crackdown on perceived political opponents in Matabeleland, stained Mugabe's reputation and hinted at the authoritarian tendencies that would come to define his regime. Despite these early warning signs, Mugabe's grip on power remained unchallenged. He became president in 1987, after the prime minister position was abolished, strengthening his authority and laying the groundwork for decades of one-party rule. As Mugabe's regime grew increasingly autocratic, dissent was met with violence and intimidation. Opposition parties were suppressed, independent media muzzled, and political opponents harassed and arrested. The narrative of Mugabe as a liberator began to erode, replaced by accusations of tyranny and dictatorship. Yet, amidst the growing discontent and international condemnation, Mugabe remained defiant, clinging to power with an iron grip. Were his methods of governance maybe misunderstood, or had he become a tyrant who betrayed the ideals of independence? As conflicting opinions emerged about his rule, it endured for nearly 4 decades, leaving a lasting imprint on the nation's history. During his early years in power, Mugabe implemented policies aimed at improving education, healthcare, and infrastructure, earning him praise for his efforts to uplift Zimbabwe's population. His land reform program, initiated in the early 2000s, sought to address historical injustices by redistributing land from white farmers to landless black Zimbabweans. While lauded by some as a step towards economic empowerment and social justice, the implementation of the program was tainted by violence, corruption, and inefficiency, leading to widespread economic upheaval and agricultural decline. A mixture of authoritarianism and populism characterized Mugabe's rule. He centralized power within his party, ZANU-PF, and manipulated electoral processes to maintain his hold on power. Opposition leaders were harassed, detained, or even killed. while independent media outlets faced censorship and intimidation. Zimbabwe's economy also spiraled into crisis, marked by hyperinflation, unemployment, and widespread poverty. The once prosperous nation became a shadow of its former self, facing international isolation and condemnation. Despite the challenges and controversies of his rule, Mugabe remained a divisive figure. Some saw him as a hero of African liberation, while others condemned him as a tyrant who strayed from the ideals of independence. His contributions to the anti-colonial struggle and his efforts to promote African unity cannot be denied. Yet they are overshadowed by allegations of human rights abuses, corruption, and economic mismanagement. As Zimbabweans experienced the Mugabe era firsthand, what were their thoughts on their messiah? Mugabe's rule elicited a range of opinions among the Zimbabwean people. For many, especially those who endured the fight against colonialism, Mugabe remained a respected figure, celebrated as a hero and a leading voice in African liberation. His efforts to redistribute land and challenge Western dominance endeared him to segments of the population who saw him as a symbol of resistance against oppression. Mugabe's supporters praised his unwavering commitment to Zimbabwe's sovereignty and his defiance in the face of Western criticism. They celebrated his rhetoric of African pride and self-determination, viewing him as a visionary leader who dared to challenge the status quo and assert Zimbabwe's place on the global stage. On the other hand, Mugabe's rule provoked widespread disillusionment and dissent among many Zimbabweans. As the economy faltered and political repression intensified, opposition to Mugabe's regime grew louder and more vocal. Civil rights activists, opposition leaders, and ordinary citizens alike spoke out against corruption, human rights abuses, and the erosion of democratic freedoms. Opposers faced persecution and reprisals from the state, yet they persisted in their efforts to hold Mugabe's government accountable for its actions. Their voices, amplified by social media and international solidarity, brought attention to the plight of ordinary Zimbabweans, struggling to survive in the face of economic hardship and political repression. While it seemed unimaginable that Robert Mugabe would relinquish power as Zimbabwe's president, November 2017 brought shocking surprises as events unfolded. After nearly 4 decades of unchallenged rule, Mugabe's grip on power began to unravel in the face of mounting discontent and internal power struggles within his ruling party, ZANU-PF. The catalyst for Mugabe's downfall came in the form of a power struggle over his succession. In a move widely seen as an attempt to position his wife, Grace Mugabe, as his successor, Mugabe purged potential rivals within the party, including Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa. This maneuvering triggered a backlash from within ZANU-PF, leading to military intervention and the eventual resignation of Mugabe. The scenes of jubilation that greeted Mugabe's resignation underscored the depth of public frustration with his rule. For many Zimbabweans, his departure represented an opportunity for a fresh start and a chance to chart a new course for the nation. Mugabe's fall from grace marked the end of an era, signaling a significant shift in Zimbabwean politics. It also raised questions about the future trajectory of the country and the legacy of Mugabe's rule. While some celebrated his ousting as a victory for democracy and accountability, others expressed concern about the manner in which it was carried out and the potential for instability in the post-Mugabe era. The first glimmer of hope appeared when former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa took over as president on November 24, 2017, after being backed by ZANU-PF as Mugabe's successor. Although Emmerson's government tried to shake off Mugabe's radical and ideological rhetoric and policies, Zimbabwe's military, which played a crucial role in Mugabe's ousting in 2017, still holds significant sway over government affairs. On the upside, Zimbabwe has started to reconnect with international financial institutions, a process that had ground to a halt during Mugabe's later years. With Mugabe out of the picture, President Mnangagwa is working hard to prove that his administration can and will improve things. Embark on a journey to uncover Africa's concealed narratives and untold stories by subscribing to our channel. Become part of a community passionate about understanding, engaging, and appreciating Africa. Hit subscribe, embrace the unknown, and join us in reshaping perspectives.